Hello, everybody. Apologies if there's any background noise where I am. I'm busy trying to fix my mic. Let me just give you a little bit of an overview of what we'll be doing today. Thank you for joining us for our webinar. And then hopefully in a couple more minutes, people will be joining. But if you have any questions, please use the chat function or the Q&A function that you'll see on your screen. One of my co-hosts or I will be able to attend to your questions. And it's important that the questions that you do ask related to content will be used and answered at the end of this webinar. I just want to introduce quickly to all of you here today why we're doing this webinar series. And for those of you who haven't heard or don't know who I am, my name is Nick Hardwick. I am the Research Associate at Digital Frontiers Institute. And part of what I do in order to promote capacity building is to plan and facilitate webinars through DFI and the partners that they have. And the reason we do this is so that we can continue the development of you guys as our membership basis and those who come through our partners as well, and continue your learning upon this digital financial services route. We'll be having a bunch more webinars throughout the year, so if you want to know anything more about that, please either sign up on our website at digitalfrontiersinstitute.org or find my email address that came with the registration and just contact me about them. There will be a list of webinars that will happen. And we're very excited to produce and disseminate information to you guys in the digital financial services sector. So I'm going to hand it over to the panelist team. They're going to introduce themselves, and if you guys have any specific questions, please let me know. And that's all from me. Over to you guys.
Hi, everyone, and Nick, thank you for that introduction. I am Annabelle Schiff, a member of the FEEDA team. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what the FEEDA partnership is, who we are, what we do, and what we are going to cover on this call. So first of all, what is the FEEDA partnership? So the MasterCard Foundation Partnership for Finance in a Digital Africa, or FEEDA as we call it, is an initiative of the MasterCard Foundation's Next Generation Financial Services Program. The partnership brings together knowledge and insights to promote meaningful financial inclusion in an increasingly digital world. And to do this, what we do is we work directly with the MasterCard Foundation's direct portfolio partners, as well as other financial institutions, mobile operators, fintechs, and other organizations which are working within the digital finance space. The 8 portfolio partners that we work with are, you can see their logos there, Mercy Corps AgriFin Accelerate, UNCDF, so the United Nations Capital Development Fund, Fiber and BFA, which are Fiber and DFI, so excuse me, which are both BFA Bankable Frontiers Associates projects, Axion Venture Labs, GSMA, CGAP, and Access Finance Rwanda. So these development and financial technology organizations have received over 100 million US dollars from the MasterCard Foundation to help support their work on digital financial inclusion. So let me just tell you a bit about the team. So FEEDA is led and hosted by Caribou Digital, which is an advisory, research and delivery consultancy which is dedicated to building ethical and sustainable digital economies. We are a team of 11 people who either work full-time or part-time for the FEEDA partnership. On the call today, we have myself, Annabelle Schiff, and unfortunately, Jess wasn't able to join the call, but we both work as senior partnership managers. We have Maha Khan, who will be speaking after me, who is senior manager in research and knowledge management. We have Neve Barry, who manages monitoring, evaluation and learning, and Abby, who is the events and communication lead. So in terms of what we do at FEEDA, our ultimate goal is to inform decisions with facts and accelerate meaningful financial inclusion for people across sub-Saharan Africa. And we do this by doing a number of different things. First of all, we aggregate and synthesize knowledge from our portfolio partners and the broader digital finance industry. We identify knowledge gaps and conduct complementary research to address these gaps. We identify implications for the different actors working in the digital finance space and facilitate learning and knowledge sharing across the portfolio partners, as well as with key organizations and audiences in the digital finance community. And lastly, we work to support the portfolio partners to ensure high quality monitoring, evaluation and learning systems. So to delve into all of the above in more detail, on this call, Maha, who's going to speak after me, is going to take you through the work we do with regards to synthesizing insights and conducting our own research. Neve will then highlight our work in impact and measurement and showcase our interactive evidence gap map. Abby will take you through our various events and webinars, and then she will wrap up by letting you know where you can find our various knowledge pieces, our research publications, how to get involved in any of our external events and webinars, and most importantly, how to keep in touch. So that is all from me, and I will hand over to you, Maha.
Thank you, everyone. Hi, everyone, and thank you, Annabelle, for the introduction. As Annabelle mentioned, my name is Maha, and I am the Senior Manager for Research and Knowledge Management. And as Annabelle mentioned a little bit, between 2016 and 2017, we built a foundation of digital finance knowledge before really delving into more focused research, which I will be speaking about a little bit later. And so with the goal of building a strong foundation in order to help inform the decisions with facts, as Annabelle had mentioned, we identified, we scanned and synthesized learnings from across the digital finance field and identified and read over 500 of the most relevant and important documents from practitioner, policy and academic research communities. And then we channeled these insights from these documents into 16 broad learning themes. So each of these themes, or snapshot, as you see on the slide, is comprised of a set of questions that addresses advances in the digital finance sector across 4 themes that we have categorized. So there is ecosystem, institution, client, and impact level. And our 16 snapshots, they capture current understanding about a topic in question. They highlight notable new learning, and they also call attention to implications for future research and investment. All of these can be found on our website, which we will have a demo later on our website that our colleague Neve will be giving us. So just to give you an example of a snapshot, so for example, under our client theme, we wrote a snapshot to understand what drives customers to adopt and regularly use a product or a service. So whether it's a mobile phone, a savings account, or agricultural technology. But the snapshot went beyond just understanding needs. We also looked at behaviors, attitudes, experiences, and beliefs, because all of these factors really play an instrumental role in driving, hindering adoption and use. So this snapshot, which is snapshot 2, it focused primarily on the impact of social norms, social networks, and social relationships. Another example is under our institution theme. We have snapshot 9, and that takes readers through what big data and analytics is, how it can be used in digital finance, the benefits for organizations, as well as outlining best practices for organizations that are interested in employing big data and analytics. So it's again synthesizing literature from across the digital finance industry. And so I've just highlighted just 2 examples of research synthesized in our snapshot that does intersect various topics and synthesizes literature from across the digital finance field. Moving on to the next slide, we do conduct our own research in parallel to the snapshots, but before I introduce the research that we have conducted so far, which has primarily been on big data analytics, I'd like to ask you 2 questions on big data analytics, which you will be answering live. So the first question is, which of the following is not part of the 4 V's, so of big data analytics? So if you can take just a moment to click one that you think is not part of the 4 V's, that would be great, and then we can discuss the answer. So I'm just going to give a few more seconds for everyone. Great. Okay, thank you for answering. So the correct answer is visibility. I'll just take big data generally exhibits 5 characteristics: veracity, velocity, volume, variety, and then complexity, which is not part of the B. So volume is generally referring to the large volume of data. And velocity, that's typical of big data. And velocity is really data now is coming at unprecedented speed and has to be dealt with in a timely manner. And data comes in all types of formats: structured, numeric data, and traditional databases, or unstructured text documents, so email, video, audio, etc. So that's the variety. And to give you an example, in the world's 6 biggest emerging economies, so that's China, Brazil, India, Mexico, Indonesia, and Turkey, big data has the potential to help between 325 million and 580 million people gain access to formal credit for the first time. The second question that I'd like to ask you, that's more just from our knowledge before we start talking about big data analytics, is, and there's no right or wrong answer to this, it's really about you and how your organization uses big data analytics. So if you have used big data analytics, what have been the use cases? This is multiple choice. So either to find new customers, manage risk, design customized products, or maybe you're not sure. That's something you can definitely answer. Would just be great to hear what you have to say before I go into our research. Okay, here we go. Okay, that's interesting that there are some of you that have used this to do some sophisticated analysis with big data. So just moving on, in terms of the research that we conducted, if we can move to the next slide, please. In late 2017, our colleagues at FIDA interviewed organizations, so these are MNOs, financial institutions, and fintechs, on how they may be using big data or may not be using big data but are thinking about it. And the major findings were that there is an emerging demand for analytics of traditional or big data sets in East Africa, but there's not really a market to enable players to profit directly by exchanging big data, and very few organizations pay or get paid directly for any kind of data aside from the credit reference bureaus. So really the research highlighted 4 major findings. One was that lenders have a limited use case for third-party data. The second is that organizations are pursuing partnership models instead of transactional relationships. The third is that most organizations are still testing, refining, and experimenting with data analytics. And lastly, that it's really important for organizations to have and develop a strategy and gain leadership support to employ big data analytics. We did note in our research that a lot of the organizations are facing a skills and human resources issues, and that fintechs often find themselves training their partners, and this takes up a lot of their valuable time that could be used in actually delivering products. Nevertheless, though, it's exciting to see that there are some major traditional financial services organizations that are trying to make strides towards digital underwriting processes, and that will support better financial solutions for the mass market. And we were encouraged to hear that attitudes about fintech players were shifting within banks as well as MNOs, and that there is a belief in the potential for big data and analytics to unlock value. And as I also mentioned, we have a snapshot, which is snapshot 9, that outlines best practices for various organizations, like how Axion and IFC have put together best practices on how to implement big data analytics. We also recently wrote a blog on our website on the virtue and value of mobile operator data. So this is mobile behavior data, and how to use that, and how people may be using that or may not be using that in building financial services products like credit. So we go through the benefits and also a lot of the challenges that fintechs and other FSPs have in using mobile operator data. Moving on, we have also been conducting research earlier this year on how fintechs are using big data. We just released a case study on how two fintechs, Apollo Agriculture and Harvesting, are using Earth observation data in making lending decisions. And so this is still a nascent technology in satellite imagery. And so highlighting how they're using this in their practices and employing. One is employing a business to customer model, Apollo, where the smallholder farmer is directly their customer, and how they're providing a credit score to their customer, as well as a package of seeds and fertilizers and advice, and how Harvesting is providing its analytical services to financial institutions. So both using satellite imagery in developing a credit score model. So we discussed the necessary skills it takes to meaningfully use Earth observation data, the challenges that both Apollo and Harvesting faced in developing their product, and what their business model looks like. We'll also be publishing a second case study on psychometric assessment in financial services, and this should be published next month, featuring Lendo EFL as well as Juhudi Kilimo, which is a microfinance institution. And again, this will be going through their journey and their narrative on developing the assessment, psychometric assessment, and then how it actually worked in the field. Lastly, this year in 2018, we are conducting research under the theme of financial inclusion in a platform era. Here we examine how rapidly evolving technologies and the rise of super platforms influence the digital finance ecosystem, what this means for companies and organizations in the space, and long-term implications. So just to give you some context, digital platforms are systems with host and structure interactions between third parties in order to create value. And as opportunities increase to engage digitally with customers, providers will face a complex environments of platforms and other third parties, and there'll be varying benefits and cost. So within this theme, we have a couple of research streams. One is how MSMEs engage with platforms such as WhatsApp, Google, Facebook for businesses. And so we'll be really focusing on micro enterprises, and in many countries, these are often the most common form of livelihood outside of agriculture, and they also tend to be informal or low productivity. So we want to explore how they interact with platforms, if at all. So for example, advertising themselves as a micro entrepreneur through WhatsApp or through Facebook. We'll also be looking at conversational interface and whether conversational interfaces like chatbots facilitate deeper engagement with customers. And lastly, we're also exploring platform partnership structures, economics, and decision-making for digital finance providers. And this will particularly focus on the role and cost benefit of using various platforms in the business model. And so that's all for the research that we'll be conducting. I'm happy to take any questions you may have on the research at the end of the presentation. And I'd like to pass the presentation now on to my colleague, Neve, who will be speaking about measurement and impact. But thank you.
Great, thank you, Maha. Hello, everyone. So we're delighted to be able to take you through some of our highlights of our work under the Digital Finance Impact and Measurement workstream. Today we're going to be showcasing just 3 areas. First, we're going to give an overview of our theory of change on client impact. Secondly, building on the client impact theory, we're going to be demonstrating a resource we developed called the Digital Finance Evidence Gap Map. And that highlights what we know and what we do not know about the effects of digital finance on the users. And lastly, we're going to point you to some of our impact and measurement publications and let you know what else we're going to be doing this year. Right. So I hope I don't see any participant numbers drop off with the title of this slide. I've been talking about theories of change in various sectors and projects for over a decade, and I know that it's hard to get people excited about theories of change. But we cannot begin a discussion about the impact of digital finance on clients without creating a framework or a theory around what exactly that impact might be. So just as you are unlikely to launch a new product without first thinking about what the client use cases are, we too need to develop some theories that could answer this question around what changes could a client experience when they use a digital finance product. So here's what we came up with. These outcomes represent what kind of we as an industry have either learned and tested or hypothesized to date, and what we have looked for as FIDA in our scan for evidence on the impact of digital finance. So I think of this as a pathway. This represents the pathway that we think clients could take when they use a digital finance product. As you can see, we've hypothesized changes for clients in terms of saving more, paying less in terms of time and in money, and engaging in healthy borrowing. From there, we're looking for changes in empowerment, consumption, resilience, which may lead to asset and income investing, more income, and improvements in physical, emotional, and educational welfare. Of course, there are a couple of caveats to this theory that we should state. First, of course, we know that digital finance is not a singular product. It includes savings, credit, payments, transfers, and insurance. So while we have one impact pathway for digital finance, we need to recognize that the impact pathway for a digital insurance product is likely to be different than that of a digital savings product. So perhaps they'll arrive at similar outcomes, but they may have taken different paths to the destination. Secondly is that we also recognize that products are designed and delivered in very different ways. For example, you might have a credit product delivered over a mobile money channel, and then you could add a two-way SMS service for client questions and client training. That may have a different effect than if you just offered a plain vanilla digital credit product. And lastly, of course, we recognize that country contexts vary and that they can either support innovation or create barriers. So your digital insurance product may have great uptake in Tanzania, but may struggle in Senegal. So while this is a good general framework to understand the combined effect of digital finance, if you wanted to get specific about a particular product, your product, then you should develop an impact pathway for that specific product. So how do we know if this theory here is accurate? So this is where client impact evaluations come in. For example, you have launched a merchant credit product and you think it might lead the client to invest more in their business. So you then design an impact valuation to see if that's the case, if merchants now invest more in their business after using your digital credit product. So without evaluations like this, we would be in the dark when it comes to understanding the actual effects of using various digital finance products. So as I mentioned, this client impact theory was important to us because we wanted to build an evidence base that could help us think about and shed some light on the question, what has been the impact of these various digital finance products on clients? So using this framework, we set upon a task of scanning the literature for client impact evaluations and client impact studies. And for a number of months between 2016 and 2017, we reviewed hundreds of studies to check for evidence. And if you're interested in our methodology of doing this, that's available on our website, and it will also be in the email that we send out after this. So for the studies that we included, we of course coded the findings by the type of product, by how that product was designed and delivered, for example, either through mobile money channels or banking channels or using gamification or so on. And of course, we coded by what outcome they examined and if that outcome had positive, negative, or no effects. So we mapped out all this information in an interactive resource that highlights where we have evidence, what that evidence looks like, and also where we don't have evidence. So we're going to do a demonstration of the evidence gap map, but just before we do, I'd also like to take a quick poll of the audience thinking on the impact of digital finance. So it's just an opinion poll. So you can just take a moment to answer two of the questions here. Where do we think we stand in terms of digital finance impact on clients? Is it positive, negative, mixed, or no idea? And which of these digital finance products do you think has been most frequently tested for client impact? So either mobile money or digital payments, banking, credit, savings, or insurance. Just give a moment for that. Great, fantastic. Great, so thank you for answering that. So we see the highest on where we stand in evidence is mixed. There's also some optimists in the room as well, saying mainly positive. And in terms of products and services, most people are putting most of their eggs in the basket of digital payments. So as we go through the rest of this presentation, I think the accuracy of these polls will be revealed. So, at the time of launching the 2017 version of the Digital Finance Evidence Gap Map, we found 40 completed impact studies that covered 41 digital finance products and 21 countries. So now we're here on the website and we're going to be able to see this evidence gap map in action. Perfect. So as you see here under input, these are all the various digital finance products that we have listed. And so as of now, we have 17 of them. So they're kind of broadly categorized under mobile money when a product wasn't specified, or mobile banking when a product wasn't specified there either. Different types of payments and transfers, bill payments, bulk payments, and what we termed, which will, I suppose, in a few years change, sophisticated financial services, which is digital credit, savings, and insurance. And so across here is the outcomes. So that's the outcomes that we had previously discussed, all along here from adoption all the way to improving income. So the circles, what you're seeing here, these multicolored circles, these indicate if there's any evidence to support that, for example, P2P leads to improving clients' savings behavior, or merchant payments leads to improving income, which it doesn't. So the number in the circles indicates the number of studies that are associated with that product and that particular outcome. So for example, here you can see that P2P under income generating pursuits and asset development, we've got 4 studies supporting that claim. And the color, I think no surprises here. When a circle is green, this means there is a positive correlation found, or a positive impact found between the product and the outcome. If it is orange, that means there was null, so no effect found in that particular test. And red means there was negative impact, so a deterioration in the client's state based on after using the product. So if, for example, you want to figure out what a study was, all you have to do is click on each of these and you'll be able to go to that study and see what digital finance it is and what design and delivery mechanism they used, and if, for example, they have comparison groups. And in terms of filters, we've also included several filters. For example, if you want to just look at credit, savings, and insurance exclusively, you can see where we have evidence there. So as you can see, we have very little evidence when it comes to sophisticated financial services, and usually centered around the adoption point and big gaps everywhere else. You might also be interested in the design and delivery. So this is where the study included information about little nuanced ways in which that product, the digital financial service product, was designed and delivered. For example, they might have had two-way SMS, they might have used gamification, loan limits, marketing, or had policy changes. So for example, if you're just interested in products that use gamification and two-way SMS, you can see where those studies are there. So as you can see, we have some on mobile banking, merchant payments, and with savings that have used these. And as always, you can click and find out what that specific study was. And of course, you might only be interested in certain countries. For example, you just want to be able to look at studies from Ghana, of which, you know, there has been a few. Or you might just be interested in looking at studies from Kenya, which I suppose, not surprisingly, there are much more. So perfect. So what we wanted to get at by developing this evidence gap map was really to give users like you an opportunity to engage with the evidence a little bit more quickly and efficiently. So if you're wondering what the impact evidence on P2P products in Uganda, look here first. Or if you're wondering, if you're trying to find evidence of client impact to get more investment for your product, you can also look here. And also with this, we wanted to facilitate the strategic use of very scarce research funding by identifying these key gaps in the available evidence. And thus we could kind of indicate where future research could be focused. And we also hope that providers of digital finance products may also think about contributing to this evidence by examining the client level effects of their own products. So for example, as you can see, insurance and credit are woefully undervaluated. Okay. So while the evidence gap map, as you see it, is kind of great for getting a high-level overview of digital finance client impact and seeing where you can get more information, it cannot go really into depth into the precise findings of that impact. So you have to go and read the studies to get that information. And so when we first released this, we recognized this. And so we produced some companion reports that examine the effects of digital finance overall and by specific products. So I'm just going to go over a few of the high-level findings now. So overall, we have 21 countries in the evidence gap map. Sub-Saharan Africa dominates the literature with 65% of the studies. And within Sub-Saharan Africa, not surprisingly, Kenya accounts for 35% of the literature on digital finance impact. So it's quite a popular research hotspot at the moment. In terms of the products evaluated, I think you could kind of see just by eyeballing the evidence gap map that payments and transfers, as most of you identified in the polls, was the most frequently evaluated product, and then kind of following that kind of mobile money more broadly, and following that digital savings, and just one study each on digital credit and digital insurance as well. So essentially, we know very little about the impact of digital credit, savings, and insurance products, particularly considering the diversity and the breadth and depth of products that are currently available right now. In terms of the outcomes that were evaluated, again, as you can kind of see via eyeballing the evidence gap map, adoption is quite often what is focused on. So ways in which to increase adoption of a particular product. And following that, savings behavior was the next most frequently looked at, and then a big jump to income. So as you can see, kind of at the first order outcomes are most frequently evaluated, and then there's a gap in the middle really around the kind of intermediate outcomes, and then full on to the rest. So this information really shows the researcher's outcome focus per particular digital finance product. And it very much points to a need to understand what happens after access. So while the number of studies available at the time of publishing version 1 was relatively small, with 40, particularly considering the diversity of the products, we see a mix. We see positive, negative, and no effects of various digital finance products on the outcomes. So overall, about 78% of the reported effects were positive, 10% were negative, and 11% were non-significant. However, when you take a kind of magnifying glass to each product and study that, as we did in the analysis report, we see that the volume of kind of positive impact is kind of coming from digital payments and transfers. And we have, again, very little to say about the effects of credit, savings, and insurance. So if you want to go in depth into each of these findings, we've produced a number of reports, which you can find on our website and which we will also send you in an email following this webinar. So we have, of course, the detailed analysis by products, a summary of the impact evidence as well, if you prefer a shorter read. And also we have kind of worked on various kind of approaches and methodologies for evaluating impact specifically for the digital finance sector. So we're now in the process of updating the evidence gap map and expect to have version 2 by October of this year. So do feel free to add any questions in the chat and I will pick them up at the end of the presentation. I'm going to hand over to Abby for the final piece.
Thanks, Neve. So in addition to the work that we do in terms of synthesizing DFS insights, conducting research and identifying knowledge gaps, we also facilitate learning and knowledge sharing among the wider DFS community through events and webinars. So each year we run a number of internal FIDA events and also some external events that we open up to other organisations working in the DFS space. This May, we organised a live learning trip to China for our portfolio partners, and a couple of fintech startups joined as well, to learn about the unprecedented growth of digital finance in the country. The week was immersive and intense and designed to allow participants to escape the boardroom and experience Chinese digital finance firsthand while meeting with some of the leading digital finance providers. So there were 24 participants in total, and during our 5-day trip, we visited 3 cities. There were Beijing, Hangzhou, and Shenzhen. And we met with 7 companies who talked us through how they leverage technology, artificial intelligence, big data, social media, entertainment, partnerships, and more to build some of the world's most successful fintech businesses. We are currently working on a blog series which highlights our key findings from this trip and how these insights may be applicable to digital finance operations in Africa. We will be running a mini event series as well in a number of cities across Africa to share insights from the trip in person. So having read the blog series, which we are launching tomorrow, if you are interested in attending any of these in-person mini events, please do come along. We will be keeping the website and our social media channels updated with all the details. In terms of upcoming webinars, we will be running a couple more throughout the year, which will be open to everyone. And the topics that we have coming up are Earth observation, which will be a panel discussion with Harvesting, Apollo and Caribou Digital Space Development Programme. That will be happening in early August. Neve, as she mentioned, will be updating the evidence gap map and will be presenting that in late September. During Financial Inclusion Week this year, which is taking place at the end of November, we will be presenting our MSME research. And finally, towards the end of the year, we will be presenting our platform research as well. So again, keep in touch to get the details on the webinars that we'll be hosting this year. And finally, how to keep in touch with us. So our website, Finance Digital Africa, holds all of our knowledge pieces, our upcoming events, and is a good way of keeping in touch with us as well. You can sign up to the FIDA Digest, which is our monthly email and highlights our recent releases, upcoming industry events, and our favourite reads. And you can also keep up to date with us through Twitter and LinkedIn. And finally, our YouTube channel has all of our videos from our recent China trip. So please do keep in touch with us. We will be dropping a short survey into the chat shortly. If you would take a couple of minutes just to answer a few questions, we'd be very grateful so that we can improve our events in the future. And that's it from us. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat box and we will be answering them shortly.
Hi everyone, thank you for your questions. Nick, I'm just going to read a couple of questions that we've had, and if you have any other questions, as Nick had mentioned in the beginning, you can just write them on the right hand of the chat box, on the right of Zoom. So the first question is from Edmund, and Edmund writes that the challenges we currently have with big data is the necessary tools to put this data into one repository, data warehouse, and our data is all over the place. What are the available tools that can be used? Thank you for asking this question, and it is a good question. As I had mentioned earlier, we do have a snapshot, snapshot 9, which we can send to you. We'll send a link to all of our research. And in this snapshot, we really outline that big data is it's a big investment for organizations to start to employ. There's a lot of data out there. So before actually implementing big data analytics, I think digital finance providers really need to go through a couple of steps before embarking on their data journey. So really understanding what the data goals are, like what is the strategy that needs to be developed, and whether there's, what business goal can be evaluated to actually advance data usage analysis, but then also looking at like a roadmap, the skills, gaps, the IT systems and infrastructure. It is, as I mentioned, a really big investment. And it also does take a change in the culture of an organization. At senior leadership, you need to be flexible to adapt and change. And, one should not really be using big data until they are ready to, because it's not a magic bullet, but it's really focusing on building the foundation first and foremost, and making sure that traditional data sets have been streamlined as well as used and exhausted before moving into big data analytics space. The second question is also again from Edmund. At our institution, we're currently doing a project, digital transformation of the bank, and unfortunately, we don't have all the information shown on the evidence gap map. How can we best get this information? And Neve, if you can answer that question, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can, in terms of banking products, as you can see, that's a finance product that we look at in the evidence gap map. So you can kind of go there and search across that row and find the information. Or if you want that synopsis, the analysis that I referred to in terms of our publication looks at the impact evidence that we have product by product. So if you want to just look at the evidence by banking, then that's available there. So everything we know as of last year on mobile banking is available there. Now, just to make sure you're aware, it's really looking at, we've been focused exclusively on client impact. So we're not looking at business models or impacts of digitization on the business. So yeah, that's where you go for that. Thank you, Neve. We have another question about whether we
whether, I believe if FIDA is partnering with universities in US or Canada and research opportunities available to any students. Currently, we don't have any research opportunities available. We do most of our research in-house between all of us. We love working with academia. We do have a lot of our research that comes from the academic space as well as the private sector space and public space as well. And if there were any opportunities, we would definitely post them online on our website or on other in other sort of advertising spaces. Do we have any other questions at the moment? And we do actually thank you, Elizabeth, for pointing out that the Financial Inclusion Week that we referred to earlier, which is led by the Center for Financial Inclusion, that will actually be taking place between October 29th and November 2nd, so just to point that out. Do we have any other questions that you would like us to answer or anything else that you'd like us to address? Okay, I don't see that. Nick, I'll just hand it over to you, but from our side, thank you very much for your time as well as all the questions.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you everybody for joining us. That was a fantastic overview, and just it already started to pique some interest in me and where I would love to learn more from you guys. And I hope that we can, as DFI and FIDA, we can connect more and produce a partnership that has a lot to tell to the digital financial services sector. Wrapping up here, I just want to say thank you for joining us. If you aren't part of the digital financial, the DFI website, then please do make an account. Join us on Switch, which is our home and our campus for digital financial services professionals. We really are trying to build a community there, and you'll see a lot of different organizations posting research like FIDA, other corporations and institutions posting and disseminating their research. So please do come join us. And from there, you'll be able to find out when the next webinar will be taking place. And again, thank you so much to the Carabao team who led us through this. I'm trying to twist their ear in getting another webinar out of them as well. So let's hope that we'll be able to hear from them soon. And thank you very much. So in order to wrap up, there will be, if you haven't answered the survey that was posted in chat, please do that. If you haven't, you will also, this webinar will be made available via a video as well if you want to catch up or send to any colleagues. We'll disseminate that on our social media platforms, and we'll email it to you as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.